So Sam Altman recently wrote a blog post called The Gentle Singularity, and it was super fascinating because he only does these periodic essays every now and again. And usually when he does these essays, they are actually quite indicative of where we are heading. Noticeably, the last time he did an essay that was predicting where the future of AI was, he spoke about the fact that there will be AI systems that can summarize large legal documents. And when we look at how society is now, those AI systems are readily at our fingertips. So when we look at these new blog posts, it's always important to see what things he's forecasting, with what timeline, and what most people might miss. So let's dive into the gentle singularity and everything you may have missed. So the essay starts by stating that we are past the event horizon. The takeoff has started. Humanity is close to building digital superintelligence. And at least so far, it's much less weird than it seems like it should be. Now, one of the things I really want you guys to understand is, of course, well, what is the actual singularity? You see, this is a term that is constantly being thrown around in AI, and I don't think everyone knows what the true definition of the singularity is. So I'm going to explain it to you. And so the singularity is described as the moment when AI surpasses human intelligence in all areas. Some people will refer to this as AGI, and essentially a key part of this is when it begins improving itself recursively. And this, okay, of course, is called the singularity because it's quite like a black hole. If you aren't familiar with black holes, they are something that currently exists in space. And essentially, we don't really know what goes on inside of a black hole. And so essentially, if you're wondering why I'm referring to black holes, well, with a black hole, once we are inside it, we don't really know what's on the other side. People theorize that physics breaks down, and just like with AGI, predictability tends to break down. Nobody knows what happens after AGI becomes smarter than humans and then starts improving itself. If we drop a super intelligent AI into the world and it starts and keeps upgrading itself, what happens next? No one really knows. And that's just like how when you fall into a black hole, we don't know what's inside. The only thing we do know is that all the normal rules stop working. Now, some people have theorized that this will lead to an intelligence explosion. And the reason I'm citing this is because I want you to understand when Sam Altman references certain timelines later on in the video, because he actually predicts the future up until around 2035. So it's rather important that you understand where those predictions are coming from and using this as somewhat of a guide. So this is, of course, from the very famous situational awareness blog post, which argues that AGI development is accelerating faster than mainstream expectations. And one of the key points it makes is that it's possible that we will get automated AI research around 2028. Now, I don't want to focus on this too much, but it's just to give you guys a base level of understanding before the next points are made. And this is one of the things that really stood out to me, that surprises me from any of OpenAI's statements before. Of course, this is just coming from the Sam Altman blog, but this one was particularly surprising. It says here that OpenAI is a lot of things now, but before anything else, they are a super intelligence research company. And that is a profound statement when we consider the fact that we haven't actually hit AGI just yet. Most people would argue that AGI is certainly coming, but we have to remember some people would argue that AGI in some aspects looks like a pipe dream, but for some, it looks like it's just around the corner. And they state that they have a lot of work in front of them, but most of the path in front of us is now well lit, and the dark areas are receding fast, which is quite surprising considering the fact that some people still believe that there are major milestones to overcome. And I'll actually get onto that into the latter part of the video, where there are several criticisms of this blog post. Now, when it comes to superintelligence, one thing in my head I keep thinking is like, wait, did we just skip AGI? Or do they know exactly where AGI is? Now, the reason I'm showing you guys this is because Meta is putting together a new 50-person team to pursue superintelligence, or AI that surpasses human intelligence in every aspect, including memory, reasoning, and knowledge. And Mark Zuckerberg has been personally assembling a group of experts to join this secretive superintelligence team. Now, why am I adding this to the video when discussing Sam Altman's blog post? Well, most people don't know that the focus on superintelligence was a recent one, which means that, if OpenAI have suddenly shifted their focus away from AGI to superintelligence, we now have Meta in on it too. We start to get a clearer picture of where these companies might be internally with their models, with their AI research, and with their overall progress. We do know usually that there is quite likely at least a 6 to 12 month gap between what is publicly disclosed versus what is being, used inside these companies. And the crazy thing about this is that Meta recently just snagged 3 OpenAI researchers in pursuit of this goal. He apparently offered them 9-figure deals or compensation packages, offering up to $100 million per employee, which is a pretty tempting offer considering AI research was definitely well paid, but never to this extent before. So now they do talk about things that they will need to do when it comes to this superintelligence, and I do find it quite fascinating. One of the things they talk about is the fact that they do need to solve the alignment problem. And that means that they can essentially robustly guarantee that they get the AI systems that learn and act towards what we really want over the long term. And basically, the alignment problem has been discussed for quite a very long time in AI. And this essentially just means that we want them to follow the intention, not just the stated goal. And as these, AI systems get more powerful, there's a huge risk that it might misinterpret the instructions or optimize for the wrong thing and doing something harmful while still technically completing the task. For example, if we tell an AI to fix climate change, it might actually decide the way to do that is to remove all humans. And it's clearly not aligned with what we meant. And so Sam Altman actually explains this in his example where he says social media feeds are an example of misaligned AI. The algorithms are designed to, keep you scrolling and understand your short-term preferences, but they do so by exploiting something in your brain that overrides your long-term preference. Now, when we take a look at the timelines for superintelligence, the Singularity, and AGI, there are 3 key years that we need to take a look at. And there's a little bit of conflicting information, which is why I wanted to show you guys this. So firstly, he starts with 2025, and it says here that this has seen the arrival of agents that can do real cognitive work, and writing computer code will never be the same. I think for the most part, this is quite true, but recently, Andrej Karpathy has actually said that, self-driving vehicles felt imminent back in 2013. But 12 years later, full autonomy still isn't here, and there's still a lot of human in the loop. And he actually warns against this kind of hype. He says that 2025 is not the year of agents. This is apparently the decade of agents. So while Sam Altman says that 2025 is going to be the year of agents, apparently Andrej Karpathy, a very well-respected AI researcher, actually said otherwise. I mean, take a listen because it's not the perspective you hear so often when there's so much AI hype going around.
Actually, the first time I drove a self-driving vehicle was in 2013, and I had a friend who worked at Waymo, and he offered to give me a drive around Palo Alto. I took this picture using Google Glass at the time, and many of you are so young that you might not even know what that is. Yeah, this was like all the rage at the time. And we got into this car and we went for about a 30-minute drive around Palo Alto, highways, streets, and so on. And this drive was perfect. There was zero intervention. And this was 2013, which is now 12 years ago. And it kind of struck me because at the time when I had this perfect drive, this perfect demo, I felt like, wow, self-driving is imminent because this just worked. This is incredible. But here we are 12 years later, and we are still working on autonomy. We are still working on driving agents. And even now, we haven't actually fully solved the problem. Like, you may see Waymos going around and they look driverless, but there's still a lot of teleoperation and a lot of human in the loop of a lot of this driving. So we still haven't even declared success, but I think it's definitely going to succeed at this point. But it just took a long time. And so I think this software is really tricky, I think, in the same way that driving is tricky. And so when I see things like, oh, 2025 is the year of agents, I get very concerned. And I kind of feel like, this is the decade of agents, and this is going to be quite some time.
And so now we get onto 2026. So this is where Sam Altman says that this is where we are likely to see the arrival of systems that can figure out novel insights. Now, this might be referring to OpenAI systems that they're currently developing or have planned for the future, but let's actually take a look at what currently exists. Well, most of you guys might remember the Alpha Evolve, and this was a major surprise to many people because it was the first time that we saw LLMs not by themselves but in a system where they could, find new solutions to open mathematical problems. And this was incredible because for the longest time, one of the biggest criticisms of LLMs and current Gen AI was that they cannot create any new useful knowledge. And Google essentially shows that this is showing incredible promise for application across many areas. And it actually helped speed up efficiency in Google's data centers. So overall, I'm not sure about you guys, but maybe 2026 might be that year for OpenAI, where they do have a bunch of different things that are able to generate new knowledge. But I do think that, yes, in the near future, it's quite likely that, companies like Google, Anthropic will start using AIs in systems that are able to generate novel insights. And if you want to know another company that is working on this, you can check out Sakana AI for their really interesting research papers like the Automated AI Researcher, which generates new ideas. Now, of course, we do take a look at 2027, which is where Sam Altman says that this is where we may see the arrival of robots that can do tasks in the real world. And I think this one is relatively true considering where we are with robotics right now. And so one of the recent demos that we saw was the Figure 3 robot doing, I think it was around either 60 minutes or 4 hours of uninterrupted work using its Helix onboard AI system. So these robots that you're seeing, they aren't humans teleoperating them like in previous videos. This is a robot that is currently fully autonomous, doing a lot of work, and it's replacing human labor. So we can imagine what this looks like in the next 2 years. We're going to have better hardware, better software, and overall a more efficient humanoid robot system. So it's quite likely that 2027 might be the year that we get the ChatGPT moment for robots where they start being deployed in the homes. I do know that is quite early, but considering that robots can already do this, I wouldn't bet against the rapid rise in AI technology development. And now this is where Sam Altman actually talks about that robot development for the year 2027 and what it actually means for the future.
5 to 10 years, we'll have great humanoid robots.
Yeah.
Like amazing. And they'll just like walk down the street, be doing stuff.
Yeah, I mean, you would think that's where a huge amount of step change unlocks, right?
I think that will be one of the moments that not only unlocks a bunch of stuff in the world, I think that will feel the strangest.
Yeah.
We get used to a lot of things. We get used to like ChatGPT doing these things that would have sounded like a miracle 5 years ago. But if you walk down the street and it's like half robots, are you going to get used to that one right away? I don't know. Probably you do, but it feels like a big difference.
That's the one that'll feel like there's like a new species taking over us.
Yeah, I think that'll feel, I don't think it'll feel like a new species or that it's taken over, but I think it will feel like the future in a way that ChatGPT still does not.
And so now we get to the 2030s. So he says here that in the most important ways, the 2030s may not be wildly different. People will still love their families, express their creativity, play games, and swim in lakes. But in still very important ways, the 2030s are apparently going to be wildly different from any time that has come before. And we do not know how far beyond human level intelligence we can go, but we are about to find out. And that is very true. Some people think that there might be a universal cap to intelligence, such as you can't get that much smarter, whilst others believe that, intelligence is purely unlimited. There is simply no limit to how smart you can get. So we don't know currently, but it's quite interesting to, sort of ponder and figure out and go down this path of beyond human level intelligence because things start to get confusing. Apparently in the 2030s, intelligence and energy and ideas and the ability to make ideas happen are going to become wildly abundant. These two have been the fundamental limiters on human progress for a long time. And with abundant intelligence and energy and good governance, we can theoretically have anything else. Apparently, the rate of wonders are going to be incredible. And this is where we get into 2035. Apparently, it's hard to even imagine today what we will have discovered by 2035, and that is 10 years from now. And I think, he's pretty right. I mean, if we look at every single, decade, we have achieved a lot more in each subsequent decade because of the technological advancements that build on each past decade. So he says that maybe we go from solving high energy physics one year to beginning space colonization the next year, or from a major material science breakthrough one year to high bandwidth brain computer interfaces the next year. And many people will choose to live their lives in the same way, but at least some people will probably decide to plug in. And if you aren't familiar with what he's talking about plugging in, some people actually think that it's quite likely that humans might just merge themselves with AI so that they can become even smarter. I mean, some people don't want to be left behind. And if, you've got this super intelligent AI that you could potentially plug in with yourself, companies like Neuralink and other BCI companies are going to start potentially offering those services. Now, if we're talking about human augmentation and merging with AI, it makes sense to talk about Ray Kurzweil. So Ray Kurzweil is an American inventor, author, and this is the guy when it comes to predicting how technology, more especially, AGI or AI, is going to change the world. He actually, helped create important technologies like text-to-speech software, but he's most famous for talking about the future. And this guy, Ray Kurzweil, is or has been popularizing the term the singularity. And he actually thinks that people will merge with humans around 2045, 2035, and that humans are going to live much, much longer and potentially forever. And he actually wrote a book that you might want to read called The Singularity is Near. We can see him here on a recent podcast talking about the singularity, and of course, Sam Altman's Gentle Singularity.
I estimate that the singularity, when we will expand our intelligence a millionfold over our unenhanced capability, will take place in 20 years. Today, that's a conservative estimate. We are the species that increases our ability to positively affect our surroundings with our technology. No other species on the planet is able to do this. AI will bring this capability to all humans.
And if we're talking about people who communicate AI, we need to look at Nick Bostrom, the Swedish philosopher best known for his work on the future of humanity and the risks and opportunities posed by advanced technologies like AI. He actually runs the Future of Humanity Institute at Oxford University, where he studies big picture questions like what happens if AI becomes smarter than humans, or how do we make sure it doesn't go out of control? And he actually has a book that became very influential, especially among tech leaders like Elon Musk and Bill Gates, because it explains how a super smart AI could reshape or destroy the world. And in this short interview clip, he actually explains the singularity.
I do feel AI timelines appear relatively short from this point on. I mean, we are really far along the path towards AGI already. The things that are now possible, if you had asked people 20 years ago, I think many people would have assumed, well, if you can do these things, if you actually can have like an AI that can have a conversation with you in ordinary language, and like you can't even tell whether it's an AI or a human, like unless you're really an expert to know exactly how to that seems like AGI. Computers that can write code like at the level of like maybe an entry programmer. I feel there are not that many of these steps left because before you have AI that can do all kinds of AI research better than humans can do. At which case you have, I think, an intelligence explosion, because then you have the AI research being done by digital minds at digital timescales, and then you get a very rapid feedback loop, right? With each subsequent improvement, the force that is doing the improving gets stronger, and you might then have some kind of singularity. Now, exactly how many years that is away is hard to tell, but I think we are no longer in a position where we can be confident that it couldn't happen even within some very short period of time, like a year or two.
And one of the opinions that I saw recently was from Sergey Brin. And Sergey Brin is best known as the co-founder of Google. And in the context of AI, this is the guy who's played a major role in shaping how AI develops and impacts the world. I'm not going to get into all of his incredible achievements, you probably already know them, but he actually thinks the singularity is arriving faster than anyone could have expected.
I think from an intellectual standpoint, you can kind of reason your way through the singularity. And, famously, Ray Kurzweil did this I don't know, however many decades ago. I don't remember what date he said. It was 2037 or I can't remember. He put some date on it based on his extrapolation. Today it looks like maybe that was kind of conservative. I don't know. But you can intellectually sort of reason through it. I think to see it happening is altogether different.
Yeah.
And I think when you're kind of talking, whatever, 15 years ago, I won't say you're like joking around. You're like truly talking about it, but you're kind of like, you know, imagining the science fiction future, but it's almost like a game, like you're just kind of, you know, chatting with the other folks who are interested in it. Like, I think it's fun. But yeah, as I said, seeing it actually start to happen, you know, feels very different.
And so when it comes to the timelines, what do other AI CEOs say? So I've built this short forecasted Singularity timelines with Perplexity AI. And essentially we can see here just how different the timelines are in terms of when people are predicting the Singularity will occur. Now, of course, Sam Altman has essentially said that, well, the Singularity has somewhat already started. That's why he's called it the gentle Singularity, saying that the changes have already started, we already have entered the Singularity, and things are already smoothly moving inwards. When we take a look at others like Dario Amodei, we can see that he's got around 2026 to 2027. Ben Goertzel thinks around 2027 to 2030. Demis Hassabis, the CEO of Google DeepMind, thinks around 2030, so he's thinking around 5 years. Eliza Yudkowsky thinks 2026 to around, 2035. And then Jeffrey Hinton thinks around 2030 to 2045. It's super, super interesting. And Wade Kurzweil, we can see around 2045. So, you can kind of screenshot this, and I guess it's going to be super interesting to see where things are going to be. I mean, super, super fascinating. Now, we do need to take a look at the critics of this, because Sam Altman actually did respond to Gary Marcus when he tweeted something. And this was kind of like a heated debate. It was making the rounds in articles, and this gentle singularity, the prediction of the future, it didn't sit right with some people. So Gary Marcus says here that Sam Altman keeps doubling down on bigger and bigger promises that are harder and harder to keep. And apparently, didn't Elizabeth Holmes do the same? And so he's essentially saying here that Sam Altman is kind of a fraud in a sense, because if you don't know who Elizabeth Holmes is, she was the CEO of a company that was supposed to revolutionize blood work. She had this company called Theranos, and the big deal and the big thing was that, they were going to prick your finger and you'd be able to get some instant results on any kind of medical disease that you had, and you'd get all these results from simply a prick of your finger in these machines that would be installed everywhere across the world, revolutionizing healthcare for everyone. But alternatively, she's now in prison, I think. So it's important to know that that's the point that Gary Marcus is trying to make here. Now, there are some specifics of that story I probably did get wrong because I don't really remember everything. But the gist of it is that he's basically saying that Sam Altman is just making promises that it's quite likely he won't be able to keep. And so we can see here that Sam Altman pretty much has had enough. He says, I can't tell if he's just a troll or extremely intellectually dishonest. We have hundreds of millions of happy users, the 5th biggest website in the world, and people talking about it being the biggest change to their productivity ever. We deliver, and he keeps ordering us off his lawn. And he says, I think it is probably trolling. He has been so confident and so wrong for so long, to say nothing of so mean-spirited, that I really can't see how he means it. And so we can see here that Gary Marcus, once again, and this isn't some random guy, by the way. I know you might be watching this video thinking, well, who's Gary Marcus? This is a guy that's, founded, I think, 2 AI companies, successfully sold them. And he's been a critic of Silicon Valley / the tech AI world for quite some time, and basically saying that you guys are sort of exaggerating almost everything that generative AI can do. And he says here that, Sam, I don't take issue with OpenAI's achievements. I take issue with the hype and history of misleading statements. Take a look at some detail below. He says that you've built something impressive and in many ways groundbreaking. I would be singing OpenAI's praises, and it's amazing how you scale transformers. If it weren't for the hype, much of it fanned by you, that has massively overstated what the technology can do today and in the near future. Going back to the Rubik's Cube demonstration that misrepresented what you had done. I think this hype is harming the world. And if I seem frustrated, it's because of the damage and the wasted potential to the field to which I've dedicated most of my life. He says that his only commitment is to the fact that pure scaling of LLMs won't take us to AGI. And he references the Apple paper, which is where they essentially say that LLMs can't reason. And he says that's one of the latest studies that only reinforce his prediction. He says he's done research for 30 years, published in leading journals that have foreshadowed it, and so have many others. And I do think this statement is right. Pure scaling LLMs won't lead us to AGI because of the true concept of AGI. We're going to need a lot of different things, but of course, some people disagree. And so this is where he actually talks about different things, okay? And this one is super important because in the news recently, there has been, I don't want to say an onslaught of comments at Sam Altman, but there have been a lot of statements from a lot of reputable names in AI, like, you know, CEOs of other AI companies like Anthropic, you know, Mira Murati, former OpenAI employees. I mean, several, at least, you know, around 8 to 10 OpenAI employees. They've simply said that, you know, you can't trust Sam Altman. And this is what Gary Marcus's references as well. He says that I stood next to you as you tricked the Senate by saying that you had no equity in OpenAI when you actually indirect had equity in OpenAI via YC. And you told the Senate you favored serious AI regulation, and now you don't. You told the Senate you supported compensation for artists, and now you've backpedaled. And I told the Senate at the time, I thought you were sincere, and in hindsight, you had me fooled. And so you tricked the world into thinking OpenAI would be open when it is not, and that it would exist for the benefit of humanity when it mostly hadn't. And he's just talking about the fact that OpenAI was started with this entire goal of it being an open research company that would simply benefit AI in terms of providing it to everyone for free and ensuring that humanity doesn't misuse the incredible technology that they are developing. Now, I might actually play the Senate clip because it has probably been viewed around 20 million times because Elon Musk has constantly posted it on Twitter, and he essentially quotes it saying scam Altman because Sam Altman allegedly lied about having no equity in OpenAI and says that he purely does it because he loves it, but it was later, you know, revealed that he actually does have some indirect equity in OpenAI via YC. And so if we're actually going to get, you know, less on Sam Altman's character here and the critics, which, you know, going back and forth and this singularity and the hype in AI and what's actually going on, he actually says, this is Gary Marcus, by the way, that you keep hinting that AGI is so close and that you know how to build it and to surpass it, but you don't really have it. And you haven't even delivered GPT-5 despite many hints. All of your talk of solving physics has no current relation to reality. Practical robots for most applications, like how humanoid robots, are not going to be here in 2027, as almost any roboticist would tell you. And where is the AI safety alignment plan and budget that you promised? So it's super, super interesting because, you know, whilst I'm talking about the gentle singularity, some just aren't convinced. So let me know what you think about this. I think it's super interesting how on one side you have people saying that Sam Altman is hyping, and on the other side you have some individuals saying that, you know what, things are probably going to take a little bit longer than we do think. I'd love to know your thoughts. Either way, it's going to be an interesting future.